Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. What's up, guys?
What's up?
How's it going?
We'll see who stumbles in. And later on, this is always our Saturday conundrum. It's who can get out of bed before noon. Just a reminder before we start, folks, follow me on X. You can follow all of us on Twitter. I also have this on the live stream goes up on Spotify. I usually put up a day or two after. People get mad at me when I don't get it up right away, but I do have a life outside of doing the live stream. But I do put it up on Spotify so you can listen to it as you drive or work out. And check out our e-course, The Science of Anabolics and PEDs. That is up for sale, and the links in the video description below. You can check out a free preview of it. We have about 2 hours worth of content up there for free if you want to check it out. So what's going on, guys?
Not much. Just happy to be here. It's always nice to see the support from the community. It's nice to see you too, Thomas.
Thomas, my asshole tingles when I see your lovely faces. I don't know what to make of that.
It means a lot.
It means he really likes us.
Imagine having a spidey sense, but only in your butthole.
Dude, I've been posting on X for a while, and I've or Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it. I've had nobody follow me, and here this week I picked up a couple hundred people, and it's when I started making fun of carnivores. All the carnivore people. I made fun of somebody eating off of a wooden chopping board, and it got. I noticed that every carnivore needs to eat off of a wooden chopping board. It's an interesting thing. It used to be
ceramic plates are not primal, Paul.
They're not primal. Used to be the old-fashioned way to show that you were a bro was to carry a gallon jug of water around with you everywhere.
Yeah.
And now it's to post a picture of your ribeye on a wooden chopping board using a butcher knife to cut it with.
I blame Joe Rogan all the time.
Hey,
He's showing pictures. What's up, Nick?
How's it going?
He's showing his pictures on Instagram of the elk he just killed, and
yeah,
he's eating it off of a chopping block with some oversized cleaver.
It's hilarious. I'll show you. I'll show you an example. So you just look up carnivore on Instagram, and let's count the chopping blocks. So this is gonna piss me. Oh, there's one right there. There's another wooden chopping block.
It's like when you go to those hipster coffee shops and they have the disassembled coffee, and you have to put it together yourself on the plate.
There's another one.
It's deconstructed. I love. It's like.
Oh my god! There's another one.
It's like the bro charcuterie board.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how that's carnivore, but
yeah.
I mean, I guess. Let's see. Oh, there's another one.
That's hilarious.
I told
Wow.
some of that comment gets. Here's another one, man. Bigger slab of butter this time, though. We're gonna have more butter on our ribeyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're not fatty enough already.
Does every bro need to eat off a wooden chop? Oh my god! Look, 3 in a row. There's another one.
Man.
Excuse me.
Oh my god! It's just I can't make this shit up, man. It's more
Yeah, or like the Liver King.
What's that? That's not carnivore.
Yeah.
the Liver King eating it right out of a field in the middle of a pasture.
I don't know, man.
I saw something disgusting the other day.
What's that?
Do tell.
Oh, it was like a carnivore recipe. What was it? It was like what are those cakes? Like the upside down cakes where they do the jello and stuff, and they turn it upside down. It's filled with stuff. Is that
I know what you're talking about, but it is gross. It's like something your grandma makes at a church party.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was one of those molds like filled with jello, and then it had like bull testicles in it, like raw bull testicles. And the dude was like, it was like him showing the recipe on Instagram. I almost threw up in my mouth when I saw it. I was like, that's just too far.
Someone probably just doing that just for the shock value for views.
Surely.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times people just do this stuff to get the views. I got a guy coming on this week. He runs a carnivore YouTube channel. We're gonna have a friendly debate about carnivore. I don't necessarily have a problem with carnivore if it helps keep you on track. That's fine. It's just like it's a shit diet for bodybuilding. That's all I'm saying.
100%. Same as keto. Like it's not ideal.
It's not optimal
like,
for performance. That's all. Like if it helps keep you on track and keep you lean, great. I do question sometimes seeing those cutting boards full of ribeyes and fried eggs. Like, how's your insides looking? But in my experience in life, if something looks too good to be true, it usually is. And if something's delicious, it's just not good for you. It's unfair, but that's just the rule of the world.
Well, here's the thing. Like this is what Kurt and I were talking about it. Like with the whole carnivore keto thing. It's certainly eating. If you eliminate carbs or processed foods, I mean, you're not going to be eating cookies, you're not going to be eating ice cream, you're not going to be eating cakes. It's really at the end of the day, it's just sort of a dummy-proof way of having a calorie deficit without having to count anything.
That's
100%.
With carnivore. That's when the guys are like, their only argument they ever have is like, oh, but my inflammation went away. Well, it will at first because you stopped eating processed garbage, but it doesn't mean it's going to stay away now that you're eating nothing but full-fat meat.
It was interesting. I was having debates with guys yesterday about like the high fat diets being more satiating, and I'm like, there's dozens of studies done on this. Like fat is not more satiating. It is not more.
No.
In fact, if you want to, like, you look,
potatoes is the highest satiating food, I think.
White potatoes
are the highest satiety rating.
Yeah, try. That's what I told somebody. I said, eat a heaping spoon of peanut butter and eat a baked potato, and you tell me which fills you up more.
Yeah. Well, the difference is dietary fat sits in the stomach longer, right? It can take up to 3 hours to pass. So you have that physical sensation of fullness, but the problem is it doesn't interact with leptin, so your brain doesn't recognize it as full, right? The only things that interact with leptin are glucose, any carbohydrate that turns to glucose, protein, and fiber. Dietary fat's not recognized in that manner, so it doesn't. That's why you could eat a whole jar of peanut butter. You could never eat an equivalent amount of calories as that in rice. You'd get sick because your brain would shut that sensation off way before you were able to finish it.
I mean, there's probably, my God, in a jar of peanut butter, there's probably 5,000 or 6,000 calories. You'd have to eat like 50 baked potatoes.
Which you couldn't do.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to think of baked potatoes like 150, 160 calories. Yeah, you'd probably have to eat like 40 of them.
Yeah. Screw that. Imagine the distension on your stomach.
I know some bikini chicks that could eat a whole bottle or a whole container of peanut butter.
Yeah, I've noticed. Just female competitors in general, especially tail end of prep. You got to keep that shit away from them. It's like a trigger food. They just have no ability to gauge like moderation. Like if you got like a tablespoon of peanut butter in there, it's going to be 2 or 3 tablespoons.
It was like Dr. Todd's famous line is, "You can't trust a woman with nut butters."
Yeah.
Where's Todd when we need him?
Oh, God.
I was hoping to have
Same
Justin on
for
here
you.
today to talk about his bicep tear, but I haven't heard from him.
Yeah. So back to the potato, like peanut butter or potato fat thing. It's like, so you're saying the fat's obviously higher caloric density, and a slower kind of gastric emptying rate, so like it slows down gastric motility, whereas the potato has the added benefit of interacting with leptin as well as also slowing down gastric motility due to the fiber. So slower gastric motility from the fiber, and then the interaction with leptin from being a carbohydrate source.
Yeah.
So you're getting that double whammy.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Amy says, true story. I can't keep nut butter in my house.
Women love nut butter and cheese.
Yeah. Cheese is another one. Hey, like especially like hard cheeses and stuff, like the cheese platters, and oh man, I can't think of the last time I had a cheese platter, but fuck, they are calorie dense when you get like the dried fruit, the cheeses, the olives, and if you want a bulk and you don't care about where your calories are coming from, that'll help.
My wife asked me to put a diet together for her last year, and so I wrote it up, and she's like, how am I supposed to eat butter, or I mean rice and bread without butter and olive oil? I just laugh. She puts butter on everything.
You know what I find really weird? I don't know if you guys do as well. Like, I never understood. Like, if you're gonna have like a sandwich with like jelly or peanut butter on it, I understand it. But it's like people who put butter and jelly together, it just makes no sense to me. Like, I think that's sacrilege. Like, you don't put jelly or jam with butter. I mean, yeah.
Have you tried it?
I have. I can't stand the taste.
They do. It's like in Britain they'll do like clotted cream with jam on a scone. That's just
I can do that. Yeah, like thickened cream, like when you kind of whip it. Yeah. That with jam on a scone is good. Yeah, but I can't do that.
It's only a hop, skip, and a jump from there to butter, my friend.
That's true. Yeah,
Nick,
true. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard the story where the high fructose corn syrup came from. I know I've told Paul this story before. Do you know why? It has to do with leptin. So there is a fast food company that's pretty large. I'm not going to name names. I don't want to slander anybody.
McDonald's.
In the late 70s, they were having issues with people getting big sodas and not finishing their food or ordering more food. So they couldn't upsell people with bigger fries and bigger burgers and all these things. So they went to Coca-Cola and they said, your drinks are great and all, but they're screwing us up. We can't, when people order big Coke, they don't finish their food. And so Coke was like, this was when they were still using regular sugar. So Coke went back to the thing and they just changed the percentage of fructose to sucrose in the formula and made high fructose corn syrup, and it doesn't interact with leptin. So now you can drink that gigantic soda and your brain doesn't recognize it.
So
and then you can order a Big Mac and or whatever McDonald's sells, and apple pie and extra French fries and all this other junk, and you have no idea how much you just ate.
Oh my god,
that's interesting.
I read this book. I can't remember the fucking name of it, but they talked about this. But how like it was in the 70s and 80s where how these food companies were engineering food to make people more hungry. And it was basically the saturated fat, high fructose, more specifically the what's the saturated fat that's that absolutely trans fats in high fructose corn syrup were the combination that people would just eat limitless amounts of food.
Well, there's been a bunch of studies with rats and food where what they call cafeteria style eating is when you let an animal just graze at its own will, so it can just press the pedal and get as much food as it wants. And they were when they were trying to figure out what ratio would work for overeating, they found if they gave them the perfect ratio of salt, sweet, and fat together, that they couldn't stop eating. So they gave them, and then they'd measure how much weight they would gain, and it would actually cause like neuropeptide Y also to express, which would cause more fat cells to grow, which is even more terrifying. So the animals they gave them just a carbohydrate diet, and they would press the pedal, and they'd get the carbs, and they'd eat it. And what they noticed with the carb diet is that the rats' metabolism just went up, and they basically didn't gain any weight. They just burned more calories. They ended up moving around more. They'd go on the wheel. Then they gave them just a fat diet, and they gained some weight initially, but then they equaled out their energy expenditure just like in the carb diet to kind of equal out. But when they gave them the mixed diet and they added the salt to it, the animal couldn't stop eating. Like it would just stay at the thing and press the pedal all day long and just keep eating and eating and eating. And they got obese.
That must be the study. I read this. I think I was looking through that study last night, Kurt. I was looking through that one. I also found one
like
where,
the 70s, like late 70s, early 80s.
yeah, I also found one where they equated it. This was a newer study where I'll have to see if I can find it, where they had the rats eating the same calories, but they had it all fat. They had fat and sugar. They had a group that was eating just sugar, and then they had a group that was eating like a balanced diet. And it was surprising. It was surprisingly, like when the calories were equated, it was the all fat group that gained the most fat. I guess it makes sense when you think about how carbs are metabolized. But it was the all with equated calories. It was the all fat group that gained the most fat.
Yeah.
And guess what the group was that had the least amount of fat?
Carbohydrates.
The carnivores.
The all carb group.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense when you think about it. I mean, I suppose the metabolic pathways that the human body or that any kind of body has for any organism has for fat, and then also the metabolic pathways for carbohydrates, and then on top of that, the thermic effect of food, a few other things, hormone signaling. That's why I don't get people who kind of like stick to the keto diet. It just doesn't make sense, especially in the bulking context. I know some people bulk with the keto diet, and I just think that's just a recipe for fat storage. Like, just doesn't really seem rational to me.
No, I would not want to be in a caloric surplus with my primary secondary macro source being all fat, right?
Yeah. Like you need obviously a small degree of like unsaturated fats for health, but such a small amount, especially when you're ticking the boxes with the EFAs. What was I going to say? Something on the top of that topic of that study, I think. It was the neuropeptide Y. That's the peptide that's elevated from dieting, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd have to look it up again. Most
prolonged dieting, I think it's elevated. Yeah, it's part of the reason why like people have a real hard time kind of, I suppose, attenuating fat gain post-show. Like the ghrelin signaling is obviously up, then I think it's neuropeptide Y is elevated, among a few other things. Thyroid function, obviously,
here's the study
temporarily suppressed.
This is what I do at night. I get high and read studies.
That's your toxic trait.
Dietary options for rodents study a model of obesity. It was pretty. I found a bunch of different ones, but they had normal diet.
Cafeteria diet.
Yeah. They even did high fructose, high in cholesterol. They did all this different. They did all these different studies, and the highest fat diets had the highest body fat increases. Yep. Yeah. So anyway,
Nick, it's produced by the hypothalamus, and its main functions are vasoconstriction and the growth of fat cells.
Okay. Yep. So it makes sense for that to be elevated post-show, probably, like prolonged dieting. Like, would you say so?
Well, yeah, LPL, all those hormones are going to be really skewed from basically starvation, right? And especially if you make the mistake to pull the androgen load out, right? Like a lot of guys will compete and then
and the lipolytics
they'll
as well.
like stop going to the gym, and then they'll lower the androgen load, and then they wonder why they blow up. The other one that's silly too is during peak week when guys will stop training. It's like, how do you think you're going to store glycogen? Why would there be motivation for your body to store extra glycogen if you're not training?
It's the training's what like governs where you partition the nutrients, isn't it?
Well, GLUT4 is not going to translocate to the cell surface if there's no stimulus to cause it.
So this is interesting. It said they said the use of a 60% high-fat diet is very effective since it rapidly induces the obese phenotype in rodents faster than any other diet type.
Crazy.
It is shown to trigger a higher degree of obesity, to have a greater impact on glucose metabolism, including insulin resistance. That's the interesting part, is that the high-fat diet actually causes more insulin resistance than the high carbohydrate diet.
A lot of it through gut microbiome, so it changes that. And that's what I was saying to you the other day when the guy was talking about keto for insulin resistance, and I said that's not the clinical diet that's used anymore. For diabetes, we don't remove carbohydrates. You don't add tons of fat because then you become more insulin resistant. There's really no reason to eat. A keto diet has, short of that silly stuff they did in the 1920s with seizures, there's no reason to ever use it. Even for bariatric surgery, the diet is generally like chicken or white fish and green vegetables. They don't add fat to these people's diet to get them to lose tons of weight. And the carnivore diet has zero medical application. That's why there's no studies to show.
Yeah, and this is interesting. They did a diet that was 60% sucrose, and that had less insulin resistance than the 60% fat, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
The fat that causes insulin resistance, or like just that, I suppose, that response. Do you think it'd be narrowed down more so to saturated and like monounsaturated, and not so much
Seems
poly?
to be saturated fats, right?
Yeah.
Polyunsaturated and being like obviously omega-6s and 3s and stuff like probably aren't as.
Well,
like,
your body will preferably
contributive.
use those longer fatty acid chains for cell membranes than it will for.
Yeah, so probably have more of a positive effect, if anything.
Yeah, so here it was. It also says in here types of fat. Several the studies suggest that the type of fat may play a crucial role in the development of obesity. Not all fats are obesogenic. In other words, the main contributor to the development of obesity profile of the fatty acids in the diet rather than the energy content ingested of the fat. This is why it's more important to select a high-fat diet where the dietary fatty composition are from primarily essential fatty acids versus saturated fats. So it seems that saturated fats do promote obesity more, which makes sense, right? Because your body is literally saturated fats are nothing but energy, right? They're not used for any other process really in the body. Which is wild. Yeah, and they said that it was talking about diets that are high in omega-3 and omega-6 seem to promote less adiposity. So there you go. Yeah, it's funny how people just like jump in and follow these cult diets and like don't look into any of this shit. Now, with that said, you can, and this is another thing that's been proven over and over and over again. You can literally eat anything as long as you're in a calorie deficit and lose weight. You might not have the greatest body composition. I can't remember the experiment. There was a guy that I was eating, I think it was Snickers bars, was eating candy bars 3 times a day, and did this for a month and lost weight, and his blood markers improved.
Yeah, but it was from the fat loss.
Yeah, it was from the fat loss. So really, probably the most important thing for improving your health, if that's really what you're concerned about, is just being leaner and in a caloric deficit, right?
Yeah. And then in a surplus limit.
Sorry to get off on this rant.
So you don't cause, I suppose, insufficient cell membrane permeability, because you want the cell membrane to be permeable, so you can actually get stuff in and out of the cell. And if you have too much saturated fat, that prevents that, doesn't it?
Yeah, like it basically like an eggshell, then nothing can get in or out.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll put a link to the study in the video description after we're done with this. But I read through this. I was pretty high last night, but
who commissioned that study?
Look at
who paid for
look
it?
at the sponsorship, and it's like some sort of like corn company or something like
that. I'll take a look. Yeah, it's also talking about leptin. It says leptin plays a key role in food intake and body weight. Leptin is secreted by. That was another thing too. It was talking about in the study that it seems that saturated fats also promote leptin resistance. They said usually an increase in leptin is correlated with fat mass, but I'm trying to find the part in here where they talked about that. Rodents were sensitive to leptin-induced reduction in food intake. However, despite plasma leptin high plasma leptin levels, the animals ultimately gained weight as a result of increased feed efficiency from the high-fat diet. This implies that after a prolonged high-fat diet feeding, leptin resistance is the consequence of the obese state and cause of further obesity development. So it's this spiral.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, I mean, Yeah, it's always multi.
This is a meta study. They collected a bunch of studies together on obesity and put it all together.
They did one too, a big meta one with people that they were trying to figure out what the commonalities between people that were overweight versus people that were lean were. Right, and we see, because people always think that something's wrong with them. They think it's hormonal, like their thyroid's screwed up or something. And they found on average, it was actually nothing. There was nothing really different from a biological point of view between people that were obese and people that were thin, except that they had very disordered fullness. They didn't know when to stop eating.
Versus which
goes on to get full, and you're like, I've had enough, and you move away from it. And people that tend to be heavier don't know when.
So it seems to be the high saturated fat diets cause leptin resistance, which we've seen in people. That's why Ozempic and semaglutide seems to work in those people, because it increases leptin sensitivity. But it's interesting here. It said other studies found that the composition of the fatty acids and the high fat diet are important in influencing circulating leptin levels and leptin resistance. So it's not just a high fat diet, it's the composition of the diet. So if you're eating EFAs versus saturated fats primarily, that it's actually not as bad. It's not going to have that impact.
Well, and think about it, where would our ancestors get a ton of saturated fat from anyway? So there's a couple things that people seem to misunderstand, like the term like plant-based. Our ancestors were plant-based. Plant-based doesn't mean vegan. It doesn't mean vegetarian. It means the majority of their food was green stuff, because that's what's out there, right? So we would eat a ton of green stuff, and then the meat that we would get, those animals were all eating grass. They didn't have a ton of saturated fat on them. You go look at a deer. Like when I shoot a deer, I make ground meat out of it. I have to mix fat with it in order to get it to stay, if you want to make ground meat. So there was almost no saturated fat in our ancestors' diet. That wasn't until we started cutting up animals and feeding them crap to fatten them up.
Agricultural farming and stuff.
Yeah,
100%, because it was all like wild game meat until
where would
the
you get
agricultural
if you've ever hunted before, there's almost no fat on most animals out there.
Yeah, that's the part that's the part that makes me laugh, like with the carnivore guys talking about our ancestors eating this. I'm like, your ancestors weren't eating sticks of butter and ribeyes.
Where were they getting? They weren't eating cows.
No, they weren't even eating cows. It was wild game.
They bring cattle here. They weren't even here.
No, it was whatever you could. I mean,
go kill a rabbit or a squirrel. There's no fat
here in North America. I mean, the native people were eating bison and gathering berries and whatever they could find in the woods. And bison, if you've ever had wild bison, it's super lean.
Yeah, that's the thing. It just makes no sense. Like, it's just a complete misconception.
Yeah, so I mean, all this stuff is just completely. These assumptions are completely wrong. Like once again, like if it gets you in a calorie deficit, it's probably better than being a fat, typical piece of shit.
Anything's better than being overweight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy John, Paul, I know you're not using Serostim. I'm saving my Serostim for contest prep.
I'm saving it for it, man.
I'm using Serostim.
Speaking of like good quality stuff, I'm probably looking at trialing some Increlex in the near future.
Nice.
I'm thinking of, before I leave Thailand at least, because we'll have to leave briefly, even if we come back here until I go to America or whatever, like we'll have to go back and like sort all our stuff out, like I suppose finalize our affairs and consolidate everything. Like, we got stuff in storage there and whatnot, but I'm really considering giving Increlex a go, because I don't know, everybody that I've heard who's used it has had amazing results. Like, I mean, Roman, who's the other guy that I was listening to on a podcast the other day? Justin Compton. He said he was using, like, I think only 200 micrograms a day, and he saw amazing results. So yeah.
We just can't really get it. It's hard to get access to it here in the United States.
Yeah, it's made in Switzerland, so it seems to fall off a truck over there, not over here.
Is it
here? I've only seen
Switzerland?
hospitals here.
Oh, I thought it was
made in the
France.
same place as Serostim, like in the same, probably in the same.
Oh,
factory.
okay. Oh, wow.
I believe I could look it up. Increlex, but yeah, it's one of those things you don't see. It doesn't really fall off trucks here that much because it's not domestic.
Yeah, it has to like be deliberately kind of ordered in.
It's really rare that you don't see it in pharmacies unless it's ordered for someone. It's not something that's ever used because you use growth hormone first. But even
Yeah.
that you don't see. Like
I
Serostim is
remember there was
called in, like to fill prescription. It's called in and brought in for someone. It's not just sitting there.
Yeah, I remember there was a kid at in my grade in high school. I think it was in probably grade 9. What happened? He had like cancer or something, and he had stunted growth, and so they prescribed him Increlex. And I shit you not, the kid grew. I think he grew like probably 1.5 feet in the course of 6 months. It was crazy, like just potent. He went from looking like he literally looked like he was 9 years old still in like 9th grade, which is terrible for a guy. Like you just get picked on left, right, and center, and then next minute is one of the tallest kids in the grade. It was crazy.
That was me in the 7th grade. Sans the cancer, Nick.
Scott said he thought Increlex was from France. It might be.
Yeah,
It might be.
what I
Look at
thought
the
too.
company's called Ipsen.
I think that they called it Increlex.
Backing up, Colin, you asked me who funded this study. I looked it up. It was the study was funded by the Health Ministry of Spain.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
At least it was somewhat unbiased then.
It's a meta
Wasn't
study.
funded by.
It's not they collected data.
Oh,
from-
meta-analysis. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you'd need to know, like, you know, who funded each individual study that they gathered for the meta study. I don't know. I just I have a fundamental distaste for anybody who would study things like, you know, how do we make people as fat as possible and cause them to eat as much as possible, and then just use that to increase profits. You know, just not taking into account at all the you know social and public health ramifications. It's kind of fucked up.
Well, I mean, that's what happened. I mean, most of these big food companies have. I mean, you know,
I know.
There, but they have chemists that research how to balance out flavors.
Yeah.
There's I forget it, Kurt. You would know this, but I remember there's a ratio of salt, fat, and sugar that you have to make things taste good. So, like, if you're lowering the fat, you have to increase either salt or sugar to compensate, and vice versa. So that's like whenever you see low fat foods, they're probably increasing the sugar and salt content of the food to still keep it palatable, right?
Yeah. The number one cause of death in the United States is congestive heart failure from fats and sugars. And just like you were saying, Colin, and I'm the one who went to prison for selling testosterone.
I know.
It's all backwards.
Broken system. Yeah.
Marty, that's Tony, and Ryan's
Tony
got an
Meatballs.
orange boy named Leo, who may also make an appearance at some point. But yeah, my orange is his name. I've got two. The one that's always on camera is Tony.
It seems like the recipe, like if you just want to be morbidly obese, is saturated fats and sugars.
Yeah.
You know, highly processed sugars, highly processed carbohydrates, and highly processed fats seem to
drive insulin resistance with the fats, and then drive a bunch of sugar in there so your body can't handle it.
Yeah, that's
terrible.
That's the recipe.
Well, and evolutionarily, it makes sense why those are so addictive, right? Because those have the most energy, and so therefore we get the highest dose response: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. We get the highest response from the highest energy foods. So that's why, when you eat a fat, when you eat sugars, you get the most energy, you get this massive dose response, and then you go crave that. Like your brain says, give me more of that. So, I mean, it makes sense why people just gravitate towards those things. But we got to, technology and the ability to refine these products is what got in the way. Technology gets in the way of a lot of the way our ancestors, a lot of different things, drugs, are everything. So technology gets in the way of a lot of this.
Might argue that the profit motive supersedes the technological drive of
that's true.
Innovation and refinement.
It's true for every industry. That is true for every goddamn industry. It's disgusting. Well, just
not the
operates
best.
on greed, unfortunately.
Not the best.
But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, the human species was basically, the sole purpose of any organism is to survive. So you have to have adaptations that encourage the survival of your species. And so I mean, over millennia or even a longer stretch of time, we have to have these kind of, I suppose.
Amy with a good one here.
I don't say sorry?
Kurt's talked about this one before. Degradation of the phospholipid layer of the cell causes accumulation of advanced glycated end products in the cell endothelium, leading to heart attacks. That is true, right?
Okay. Yeah.
There's many things that lead to a heart attack, but yes.
Yeah, it's one of the, the endothelium of the, what is it, of the blood vessel, right? It gets all fucked up.
Now, I understood some of those words. Joey D. Paul gets high and reads studies about fat. I get high and read the label of Sour Patch Kids and get fat. we are not the same.
I will say there were some McDoubles consumed last night. No, actually, I skipped the McDoubles last night. I was good.
Yeah. Is that your go-to off-plan meal?
I've been having them like every day lately.
I love a McDouble. Oh God.
Speaking of diets, I've been failing to hit my my carbs lately.
Dude, I can't eat, man. I don't know what my problem is. I'm just like 255, 260, and that sixth meal comes around, and I just can't eat it. So I've just been getting McDonald's sometimes just to get the calories in. It's the only thing I can get down. I look at the chicken and rice, and I just want to puke. I can't eat it.
And do you find too, like if you do force yourself to eat that last meal, when you go to bed, you literally feel like you can't sleep because it's just sitting there in your throat?
Yeah, it fucks me all up. I've been trying to get the 6 meals in, but I've been mostly 5 lately. Although, go ahead.
I was just saying you got to get some of that bioengineered rice that they're growing beef inside of, man. I know Kurt's a fan.
Gross.
It definitely looks like something out of a sci-fi film.
Scott's one of my clients. He's asking us. He's in prep right now. When are you guys next competing?
Colin,
Scott's one of your clients?
What's that?
You said Scott's one of your clients?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going on his show on Monday.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
I'm competing, I think, in whenever the not drug tested universe is. Is that August?
Yeah, Scott's.
I'm not sure.
Well, I should say Scott was one of my clients.
But
I'm doing. I'm doing July Masters Nationals. Yep.
Isn't that the tested one?
Masters Nationals? No.
Oh, which is the one that Joey and I were going to do?
Universe.
Okay. Where are they both in the same state, or?
They're both. They were near me in New Jersey. I don't know where they are now. I have to look.
Masters Nationals, the one I'm doing, is in Pittsburgh.
That's in July.
Yeah.
No, I could always do that one too.
To answer his question, I don't know when I'm competing next. When I'm big enough. I'm just growing.
I mean, you're pretty big.
I want to hit like a 300 pound off season. Then if I look half decent at 300 pound, I'll commit to a prep. Yeah. So currently, what am I? Been sitting. What's 122 kilo in pounds? I've been sitting at an average fasted weight of 122 kilo. Is that 273 pound or
268? Is that right?
Oh, 268.
0.4.
I don't know.
122 times 2.2. 260.
We have the same idea, Paul.
Yeah. Tina said she'll be doing Masters Nationals. There's gonna be a lot of people there. I got a couple of my clients competing, and I'm competing. That should be interesting. It's like when people are in the same show as me, I'm like, you're on your own. I'll help you out as much as I can, but it actually takes my mind off of things. Keeps me. I worry less about myself. Like, it doesn't give me time. You know how like in shows there's a lot of dead time. To start making yourself nervous and overthinking shit.
That's what social media is for. You never have to be alone with your thoughts again.
I was super calm for my show this year. I had no nerves at all. other than shitting my pants on show day.
Oh no.
Speaking of saturated fats.
Yeah.
Justin told me after prejudging, he's like, go get, a burger and fries. And I went to In-N-Out and it was disastrous.
That Imodium that we got you was like that scene in Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire holding the train back. it was holding the diarrhea back just long enough for you to do your show.
This is what a good friend Colin was. He was buying me Imodium the day of the show to help me to keep him from shitting my pants.
God.
Wow. I was like, man, do I go out for finals or not, man? I'm not sure if I can hold it in. I made sure I was so dehydrated, my eyelids were sticking to my eyeballs.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't pass out though, and I didn't shit my pants on stage. So
that's what matters.
That was a victory. There was no pro card, but that alone was a victory.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to take a couple questions? I've rambled.
Yeah, there's a few good ones in there.
I'm chatting real quick. If you want to grab one, I've got a bunch queued up.
Let's see what we got over here. We'll get to the guys that pay first, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. The Ancient of Days. Okay. I'll have to watch this back. Great work, guys. Have a great weekend. Okay. All right. Thank you, man.
You too.
Thank you, sir.
That wasn't even a question. Tommy John. Paul, I know you're not using
either.
Here's a bottle of generic. That got started up this week. I posted that I was using generic HGH, and people were like, "But Chase said you weren't using generic anymore." Like, I need Chase on here today.
Hey, if it's growth, it's growth. I mean,
I don't have the bottomless well of money like Chase does.
Yeah.
I don't know, Nick. I keep going back and forth. There's something magical in Serostim. I don't know if it's fairy dust.
I've never had the luxury of using it.
I could shoot a bottle of blacktop in my hands. I get enough. I don't know.
I don't use blacktop.
And I use liquid chromatography. I use $1 million machine to test it, and it was on the dot. And I tell you, there's just some different. I don't know what it is. It's just something different.
Well, they put a lot of money and research into developing it. So, I mean, here's what I tell people. Like, if I have the option in the funds for real pharmaceuticals, I'm always going to opt for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not always the case. I got to save and be responsible for my kids.
Yeah.
Right. So I got to pay for college
Chinese
at some point.
Yeah. I use the baby blue Chinese blue tops. And I mean, I use that, and if I test, it's like my GH like a few hours after, it's pretty comparable to what like supposedly it should be at with pharmaceuticals. So I'm like, oh, it must be decent.
I don't know.
It doesn't have to travel far though, because I mean I'm in Thailand, China. It's literally right next door. So I assume maybe the like lack of time in transit's a factor. Not sure.
I mean, Serostim is made in Switzerland. It has time in transit. Then it goes sits in a factory, and then it sits in a warehouse in Massachusetts, and then it goes to a pharmacy here. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know if it spends any less time. I don't think transit or degradation is what's really occurring. I just think they're just not quite as pure.
Mm. Yeah,
I mean, there's got to be a reason why they're putting all those extra fillers in on the Chinese stuff. There's no fillers in the pharma stuff.
Yeah. Brad says he's on 500 milligrams of test a week. Estrogen is up. It's okay, except my blood pressure is 146/80. I was prescribed Arimidex 1 milligram a week.
Split the Arimidex in half and take it twice a week.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That'll get your blood pressure down too.
I don't know if that's enough.
It
might not be enough, but I'm saying I would start there.
What's his injection? What's his injection frequency too? I'd do daily microdosing to try lower the peaks, and so that way you get less estradiol. That could potentially help bring blood pressure down too. But yeah, I like Kurt's idea, like 1 milligram, I'd definitely split that dose up. Taking it in one dose isn't wise given its half-life.
Yeah.
And then aside from that, I mean, just a bit of cardiovascular exercise, standardize your sodium potassium intake, try to keep it as consistent as possible day to day, because that can also have a bit of an acute effect on blood pressure when you take in like testosterone at supraphysiologic levels.
So you're saying McDoubles are a bad idea for blood pressure?
Yeah. Yeah. They're good. They're
Eat a
good for
banana with
the.
them, then it bounces out.
Eat a banana with my McDoubles. Then that's.
If you
Yeah.
fry the banana, then
Yeah, it's still healthy because it's a banana, right?
yeah.
And fry it in
Like fruit,
trans fats.
I've seen a problem with like taking like a milligram of Arimidex. If you just keep taking a half twice a week, it builds up in your system. And then one day you can go below a threshold. For some people it wouldn't, but I've seen that much cause a problem. So like I like to take it more about, take a small dose, smaller than a milligram for sure. And take it as you have symptoms to mitigate symptoms. Like, so as you start to feel or as your blood pressure starts to go up, maybe take it, just taking it twice a week. Again, over time, it can just build up, and then you go below a threshold for your estradiol, and then you have side effects from low estradiol. So
I can always tell
take it as needed.
I can always tell too, like I'm going through the phase right now. I'm about 3 weeks into my cycle, and it's around that 3 to 4 weeks when everything's starting to peak. My blood pressure will shoot up.
Yeah, and you can
then it goes back down.
Yeah, I tried to teach people to get in tune with their body, and you can almost feel it. You can feel when your estradiol is getting a little high. You can feel when, when things are just getting a little out. So it's more about trying to take it based on that feeling rather than just taking it twice a week, regimented every day, or every so often.
Usually if you're not getting morning wood, the estrogen's too high.
Yeah, I find another one's body temperature, and then also nipple sensitivity. Obviously, if you're prone to that, but like body temperature, I notice that, and like my sweating, I'll sweat more when I'm training if my estradiol is getting a bit higher. A few things like that, and then obviously like blood pressure too. And when you tune into that, and like you said, like notice those. I suppose,
and then you can take the aromatase inhibitor based on those feelings rather than just regimented every like Monday and Thursday or whatever.
Yeah, and if you're having real trouble kind of dialing it in, get some like blood work and just see where things are at your current dose, and then kind of maybe gauge it a little bit more. If you need numbers to help, if you're not that good at like subjectively doing it based off a feel, say you're new to this, you're not as experienced. That's worthwhile doing because like blood values never lie.
Yeah, but and what a lot of people don't do, which people should do, is actually get that blood work when you feel good, when you feel great, because everybody's different, right? So we don't know what blood levels are best for you individually until we get your blood work when everything's perfect, and then you can start saying, okay, for me, my baseline is all this. This is where I want everything to be. Of course, that will change with age too, but at least for a while, you can have a good baseline for where everything works for you.
Yeah, I've definitely sort of figured it out over the years where I need to be, and I know, I like you said, I can tell, like I can tell when my blood pressure is going up.
Yeah,
I don't even need to look at the cuff, man, and my face will start getting flushed. I'll get headaches.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with estrogen. Like I know when my estrogen's off.
Yeah.
When I start crying at movies. Have a desire to watch rom-coms. Appetite too. I'll notice like when my estrogen gets high, sometimes my appetite will start going crazy, like for junk food.
Yeah. I'd find that a blessing right now though.
That's what's happening with equipoise. Someone asked me I didn't get the answer yet, but for equipoise, why it affects some people's appetite versus not, depending on how your body handles it, what its conversion is to. So estrone and estradiol, depending on how you convert, is going to affect the hypothalamus and appetite. But some guys don't get that at all.
Yeah, I never noticed shit with appetite.
It just crashes. If it just crashes your estrogen and it doesn't seem to convert, then most likely it's not going to make you hungry.
Joshua, he's getting in tune with his body to determine if his estradiol is high.
Okay? That is true. I'll start feeling my gyno.
Is it extra sensitive? Yeah. Do I need some Arimidex?
My gyno doesn't feel it doesn't hurt at all right now. It was bothering me at the end of contest prep.
What's the old wives' tale? The bunions start hurting when it's going to rain or something like that.
I've never heard that one.
Paul's nipples start hurting when the estrogen's high.
People are obsessed with my nipples, man.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? I've seen the comments. Like, it doesn't make sense. I don't understand people. Fucking.
Well, I have one that's inverted and the other is not. So it's like I was born with it inverted. They tried to surgically repair it, and it lasted for like when he did my gyno surgery. He's like, I think I can fix that, and then he tried to fix it, and I think he just made it look worse. So people are always thrown off that I have one that sticks out and one that doesn't.
Are we allowed to address Dan Hansen's question, Paul? I don't know like all the rules on YouTube, but he paid for an answer. And it would probably be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, we can probably tap dance around that. We can't get too specific on doses and stuff.
Right.
Maybe say if we were in his position, this is what we would do. Maybe would that work?
I know that you guys will have a lot to say here.
Dan Hansen, is growth hormone worth it? Fuck yeah.
What's his age?
Whoa, 26.4% body fat. Shit.
Yeah,
that's high.
So we're probably. Yeah, what do you guys think about all that?
What's his age?
Are you still on stream, Dan? Can you update us with your age in chat?
Usually, like this is what I tell my clients. I don't know what you're telling your people, Kurt. Usually under 30, like unless you're going to be a competitor, you don't need it.
That's what I say too. I mean, yeah, and competitors can use it, but otherwise, your pituitary's working just fine.
Yeah,
it says he's 37.
Okay, I mean,
all right, yeah,
and probably if he's slightly overweight here, probably. I mean, I think growth hormone's absolutely worth it when it's needed.
Yeah, and frequent administration if you want to drive like liberation of fatty acids all day.
Like if I had to give up, like the last two things I'd ever want to give up would be test and GH.
Yeah,
Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There is some truth, and I think Kurt, you and Paul were talking about this in one of your podcasts, where people who have a high body fat percentage it doesn't seem to work as well as them until you get your body fat percentage down. Mm-hmm. So although it would be worth using, I think maybe even doing something to just get your body fat percentage down as quickly as possible. Like I don't know if you're training for a contest or anything, but even using like semaglutide or tirzepatide to get your body fat down, and then you can come off of it and utilize the GH a little better.
Yeah, that might be a better.
Like any drug or training or food, there's always genetic variability in your response, right? Like certain people just respond better to certain things.
Yeah.
It does, I respond strongly to growth hormone. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to, but I think overall it's worth using.
Yeah.
If you're using 10 units and you're not getting a response, then I would stop.
Yeah.
Or find a better source.
Yeah.
That's it. Like
you're using two is pretty benign. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, 2 is really what I would consider
just replacement.
No, I'm just saying, like, it depends what dose you're talking about too, right? Like I wouldn't expect to see anything dramatic outside of maybe nicer fingernails over a year with 2.
Yeah.
That is one thing I noticed when I started GH, especially as I pushed the doses up, having to cut my fingernails and my toenails,
and they're really
3 times a week.
Yeah, that your facial hair grew faster. Like I noticed my facial hair grew faster, stuff like that. Yeah.
Got a follow up to the gentleman who was asking about blood pressure earlier. He said he takes every other day injections and his diet is pretty tight. He's been walking 6 miles a day.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot of walking.
Yeah.
I mean,
walking to Mordor.
Does he have labs? Does he know what his total test, free test, and E2 is?
Yeah.
I mean, I would talk.
And what's his body fat
if you're
level?
Using 500 milligrams of test, there's no harm in using the Arimidex. 1 milligram a week split is not going to it's not going to crush your estrogen unless you're really a super low aromatizer.
And the blood pressure thing, I have high blood pressure just normally. I've been on blood pressure meds since I was in college. So he may be just one of those people that are hypertensive, and he needs to talk to his doctor and be on a medicine for it. I'm just, everybody in my family is hypertensive. It seems to be genetic.
It's definitely a genetic component. Definitely.
Yeah. When, like you said, Brian, like you were saying before, I feel like a decade ago, 500 or 600, I needed an AI. More than a milligram. Like I can run 12 or 1500 now with no AI. My
I'm the same way.
30. Doesn't really go above that now. Yeah. No matter what I do.
I think androgen receptor density and body fat levels play a major role. Obviously, you've been using for longer. You've been exposed to high doses, so your AR density or AR count's going to be higher per cell. And then on top of that too, I mean, there's your body fat's very low too, and you're staying in good condition, so that's going to play into obviously less aromatization. Yeah. So I think if his body fat's high, if he's new to say these doses, it could improve over time as he gets leaner and just has more exposure. Like you guys said. But yeah, I mean, body fat would be a big thing. Like if his body fat's say north of 12%, I'd say try get your body fat around like 9 to 11. At the very kind of least, if possible, and you'll notice a substantial improvement. Like I noticed coming out of the back end of my contest prep, and I think a lot of people do notice this post show, I could push my test. I think I didn't do it, but I probably could have pushed my test up to 2 grams a week while keeping estradiol in range because my body fat levels were just so low that there was just like less kind of facilities, so to speak, in my body to manufacture aromatase enzyme. So I mean, yeah, as soon as body fat crept up though, I noticed it was almost like an exponential increase in aromatization. Like I had to pull test down, throw in primo, that sort of thing. Like it's pretty interesting. So it's like a continuum. It'll change depending on your body fat levels.
Guys, I'm gonna hijack this for a second. Do you want to see how genius the Instagram algorithm is? I'm going to show you this. I wish Todd was on here. Now let's remove the comments. So here's Todd Lee, and right below it.
Nice.
That's
Dungeons and Dragons.
That's underwear. Next pair of Bruce.
He did say the other day that he is a bodybuilder first, dungeon master second.
That's brilliant.
That image takes me back to my childhood.
Yeah, I loved it. I used to play all the time.
That's the
that
red
guy
box.
said body fat, didn't he? Did the guy put his body fat up?
No, that was a different guy.
Oh,
Brad Miller?
Yeah, I think so.
Brad Miller said his body fat's around 18%. That's why I'm cutting now. What was his question? Oh, he's the one that asked about 6 miles a day. So his body fat's 18%. Yeah, so he's cutting. Okay, so yeah, honestly, as he gets leaner, his blood pressure will improve.
Yeah.
All these markers, like he's doing all the right things. I think he just needs to be patient and trust the process.
Another thing is walking. Walking is great for people who can't do anything else, but we evolved to walk efficiently, right? Like there's evolutionary mechanisms behind being able to walk without expending a lot of energy. So like, try something else. It's like running, running,
some moderate intensity, steady state,
moderate
low intensity
stuff. It's a better calorie burn. It's a better everything. So that's like, a lot of people walking. It's great if you can't do anything else, but it's better than nothing. But walking is we've evolved an efficiency to do it with expending as little energy as possible.
Are you guys trying to say I should do cardio?
A little bit. I hate it. All I can think of when I'm running, all I can think of is I can't wait to stop running.
Yeah.
I have done zero cardio since.
Maybe you should start walking to McDonald's.
Another way to get your heart rate up too, if you really want to stick with the walking due to lower impact on the joints, chuck on a weighted vest. Go for a walk then. That'll get your heart rate cranked up. Yeah. Like 45-pound vest, your heart rate will shoot up probably 10, 15 points. Yeah, that's a bit of a hack.
Or just get fat in the off season. That'll do it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's grab another question.
Sure. The Big Carpenter, can Kurt clarify his comment for a past video on not being able to grow from Masteron? Something along the lines of it doesn't put on muscle. There's a ton of controversy right now on the anabolic steroids forums.
Okay, so I didn't necessarily say it doesn't grow muscle. I just said no one can say with certainty that it does.
Mhm.
No
In
evidence.
theory, all anabolic steroids should cause some level of growth, right? Proviron, I would say with fair certainty, does not, because proviron is basically just a 1-methylated DHT, so it's not really going to cause any growth. Masteron was never studied. We don't know the AR affinity, the ER affinity, the progesterone affinity. We don't know how it interacts with cortisol. We only know its sex hormone binding globulin affinity, and it was abandoned by Syntex when it failed in the initial studies to grow muscle on rats. So the initial studies show that it didn't really grow anything, but again, that was in monotherapy, which who the heck would use Masteron alone to grow muscle anyway? It's not to say that it doesn't. I would just say, to me, it's not the most efficient way to grow muscle. I think Primo would be better, since Masteron was used as an anti-proliferate agent clinically, and Primo was used as an anabolic steroid. What else could I say about that?
I don't know why people.
I was going to say the current trend wasn't even using it for that. The current trend started with Victor Black basically saying don't use Arimidex because it's not safe. Use Masteron, which has not been proven safe either. And then these guys escalated the dose of the Masteron to gram level because it was supposedly safer than Arimidex at the milligram level, which again is not true. And that's kind of where the usage came from. And then guys were leveraging it for growth. But the thing is, like, I'm not going to name any people's names. I talked to some bigger bodybuilders that are using it in large quantities, but they're also using grams of testosterone with it and bottles of growth hormone. So it's not necessarily the Masteron doing all the work. The testosterone is probably doing the growth. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it may allow you to use more testosterone, correct?
I mean, it's not harming growth, and it's not to say it doesn't cause any growth. It's like, but if I had to pick two compounds, testosterone and something else, and I was in my off season to grow, Masteron would probably be my last choice.
Yeah,
I hate to say it, I just don't. I would pick EQ. I'd pick Trenbolone. Yeah. I would pick
anything.
Primo would be my first choice. Right. I would pick.
The way I'd go is Primo, EQ,
Nandrolone,
then NPP or something.
Yeah, there's so many other better things that are designed that have been used for 70 years for that sort of thing.
And we have a lot of human literature on Nandrolone and testosterone and Primo. Well, not a lot. We have some. And so at least we got some sort of foundation in actual scientific literature, not just anecdote, which is all we have for Masteron. I was talking to Steve the other night in the gym, like Vigorous Steve, and we're just talking about how guys who run high doses of Masteron just look unhealthy, and they do. You look at them; they literally look very old for their age. I don't think it's that healthy for you. Yeah.
Kurt, were you saying that Masteron is broken down like DHT by the HSD enzyme? I thought you mentioned something like that.
Like you're talking about carbon 3 when it enters muscle?
Well, yeah, when it enters the muscle, yeah.
It really shouldn't be. If it is fully or not, that's hard to. That's really just anybody's guess. Primo is a little bit, right? They're not perfect in that they fully block that. So that's also why, like, again, anabolic ratings aren't 100% accurate, especially in humans. But that's why things like Primo has like an 88 anabolic rating, not 100, because you are losing some efficiency when it enters the cell.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that if the dose isn't right and there's some estrogen, Primo won't grow muscle. Primo definitely grow muscle.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying Masteron doesn't. No one can say, I don't care what forum you're on. You can't say, I'm around this stuff. I can't say with certainty that it does. No one can. That's the bottom line.
If anyone knew, you would know because you literally work with it.
Yeah. Like, and the thing is, and it will never be studied because the only thing we care about now are the metabolites of these drugs. No one cares about the drug itself. And Masteron itself is cytotoxic. So Masteron itself is not a valid anti-cancer drug. The metabolites possibly are. So because I get that one too. People are like, well, I could just use Masteron for cancer. Well, not necessarily, because two of the metabolites of Masteron themselves are toxic. So what will happen is the metabolites will be isolated from these drugs at some point in the near future, and they'll design drugs based on those, not necessarily using these drugs from the 50s or 60s. The days of that stuff is over.
I'm going to be the gym bro here. I've never seen anybody get huge using Masteron as their primary anabolic.
Total data is important. It's really important. We have a ton, especially all of us here have seen a lot of guys use these compounds, and I don't think any of us can say that, oh yeah, I've seen a guy use Masteron and get huge and ripped off of it. I've never seen that. And I've seen it a lot. I mean, I've seen the use of Masteron a lot.
I think similar to what you're saying. Sorry, Paul. Similar to what you're saying. It's also like the guys that are gigantic that are using it now. So like, let's say you have so and so pro bodybuilder is 290 pounds and he's using 2 grams of test and 2 grams of Masteron, and he's massive, and people want to use that as an antidote. Well, that's not what got him to 290 pounds. He probably used 10 grams of gear of very varying things, and Masteron was not one of them outside contest prep until recently. He doesn't need to gain any more muscle. Now he's refining his physique.
That's right.
Like, and these are like, I've talked to these specific people that are doing that, and they'll admit to you that that's not what got them that big. Like Paul was saying, I don't know anyone personally who got huge off Masteron.
Masteron made my libido huge. We'll say that.
I mean, for some people, it works really well as an adjunct. Some people, it works better than Primo, for the purposes for estrogen control, fine tuning, things like that. Some people, it works better. Most people, Primo works better.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Well, the way I see it is, I think everything has utility. Like the tools in the toolbox. It's just implementing the right tools for the job. It's like you want to grow.
You, for the specific individual too. Yeah, you're
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So one, take into account anecdotes. Like, what have you found that personally works for you? What responds, like what you respond to, might be different to the next person. Then 2, cross-reference that and take into account what the literature suggests.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have literature like you kind of pointed out already on Masteron for hypertrophy. We don't have any supportive evidence in terms of the scientific literature. So, take that into account, but weigh everything up. And at the end of the day, you've got to do what you have access to, what you can afford, and what you're willing to do in regards to your health, because all these things have repercussions.
I'll ask you guys. I mean, I'm sure, Brian, I'm sure you've seen everything, but what is the most common off-season cycle that pro level guys are running?
We're all going to say the same thing, probably.
Now or before?
I mean, for me, it's always been. I've always seen test, EQ, GH, maybe a little bit of Nandrolone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what every dude that's gotten huge
now
runs.
I think it's test and Primo. I see more Primo.
Yeah, more Primo
than
now.
anything else.
And you're right. Depending on the time period too, because things fall in and out of favor. So it's like so that was a good question, Kirk, when you said what time period, because 20 years ago it was different.
Yeah, I feel like 20 years ago it was test, EQ, and probably long ester Tren, right? There was that weird, when British Dragon introduced Tren E, it was usually test, E, EQ, Tren E.
Well, guys used to use
Nandrolone. A few people use Nandrolone.
Yeah, D-ball's fallen out of favor.
Yeah, it's fallen out of favor, but it used to be one of the biggest bulkers for off-season guys.
Yeah, I'd say these days it's definitely the test and Primo. I mean, that's the most common one I see these days. But I know before Primo was very accessible, like easy to acquire, like real Primo, it was EQ. I mean, a lot of guys ran Boldenone because it was, accessible, affordable, and you could run quite large quantities of it. And I mean, the only thing you have to really keep an eye on is just your red blood cell count and blood pressure if you're prone to those effects. And
I would rank it. Primo would be my number one choice. Probably EQ would be my second. I do like Nandrolone for size, but it's just that Nandrolone just seems to be. It's like spinning the roulette wheel with side effects. I'm like, is my dick not going to work this time? Am I going to get panic attacks this time I take it?
When used properly, like I have found it's very rare for people to have adverse side effects with Nandrolone. I mean,
I never
again,
had
it's got to be used
issues,
properly.
man.
But not that there isn't people that do have adverse side effects, but I, like when I was guiding people through the use of Nandrolone, there's a specific way to do it, and I would rarely get side effects with it. Now you can read a lot of, and now sometimes people just have adverse reactions to it, but it's actually pretty rare if it's used properly.
It's actually my favorite one for size. I like nothing puts size on me like Nandrolone does, but.
And I feel like it's one of the mood is really great on when the dose is low.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like that progesterone, that little bit of progesterone makes you feel good. Yeah. To me, what I at least see with clients is it's people get greedy with Deca and they get greedy with Tren. Yeah. There's something about those two drugs that make people want to use too much of them. Yeah. Right? Like people chase a feeling with Tren. It's like you're totally fine with 300 milligrams. Why did you go to 700?
That's exactly right.
It's like you can't stop. And same with Deca, it's like, well, 400 is the cool dose, but like
Yeah.
What happens if I take it in?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they're hiding in the corner of the room and their dick doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, well, why didn't you just stay at 400? You were totally fine at 400.
Yeah,
I'm the one hiding in the
dose.
corner and my dick doesn't work.
It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. It's just those two drugs. No one does that with EQ. No one's like, well, 600 is cool. Let me use 2,000 just for shits, right? Most people wouldn't do that.
I wish Todd was on. He used to have me on these crazy Deca only trends. I remember it was Deca, Tren, and Anabolics. That's what he had me running when I was.
That's messed up.
I gotta go feed a cat.
Yeah, we can hear that.
No,
No, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I think the devil is in the dosage. I can tolerate Nandrolone at a moderate dose if my testosterone is kept low.
Yeah.
As soon as estradiol is too high alongside a 19 nor testosterone or 19 nor testosterone derivative, I'm fucked.
It's bad news.
Like, I'll get the most aggressive form of gyno start to develop if my estradiol is high and I introduce the 19 nor. Like, like nothing will stop it. So I'll avoid it at all costs a lot of the time. I think, like you said though, like a small dose in the background just to provide a bit of progestogenic activity, alongside like a good DHT derivative and a testosterone base can be very useful, because you have that, like, you're pretty much just like, I suppose, elevating the levels of all of your sex hormones essentially.
Yeah.
So you're getting that slightly higher progesterone. You're getting like higher normal kind of E2. You're getting super physiologic testosterone, and you got some DHT activity. And it's just kind of like I don't want to say perfect storm, but you're just kind of creating a good environment for growth, I think.
Yeah. And there's you know how in females they talk about estrogen dominance, right?
There's Todd. I kind of see him.
They talk about estrogen dominance, right? So, and that can start to happen in men too, right? So when we have a lot of testosterone and it's converting to a lot of estradiol, even just bringing the progestogenic nature or the progesterone receptor agonization up can level everything out. So like sometimes I'll use Nandrolone for that. And you're right, just use a smaller dose, titrate up until you find the right dose. But that can really help. It gets rid of estrogen dominance in men too. So it can start to, I don't know, almost even out the effects of estradiol if it's a little too high.
So balancing out the ratios.
Yeah, like Kurt, you know, like we know that, but the progesterone can what's the word I'm looking for? It project the effects of estrogen. But it doesn't seem to, when we have estrogen really high, and if we can bring the progesterone up, it doesn't seem to cause the adverse side effects. It magnifies the effects of estrogen, such as like for like things like joint pain or sometimes water retention, or but some of the adverse effects, such as erectile dysfunction or low libido or even fatigue and lethargy, like increasing the progesterone with a higher estradiol can actually fix that. But some of the other effects of estrogen are magnified, such as like the joint pain.
Whenever I added 19 nor derivative in when my estradiol is a bit high, I'll get bad inflammation of my like mammary glands, like the gyno will start to kind of play up. But I've also been wondering like how much of that is the increase in progesterone and estradiol or the lack of DHT, because I'm thinking maybe. Because whenever I ran Nandrolone in the past, historically, I'd keep my testosterone lower, kind of like a low testosterone approach. So I'm thinking maybe the low testosterone. Hey, Todd, low testosterone causing an insufficient amount of DHT conversion, and therefore the lack of DHT is causing less protection against those estrogenic effects.
It could be.
I'm thinking that might be it.
Progesterone can convert to DHT on its own too through a backdoor pathway, but sometimes it's inadequate.
But how efficiently?
Not very efficiently, but it's a survival mechanism in the case where something fails.
Similar to how like the adrenal glands can produce testosterone in the event of hypergonadism.
Totally. It's small, but it's still there because you can't have no DHT. When you say 19 nor, you're talking specifically Nandrolone, not Tren, right? Because they act totally different.
Actually, it was now I think about it, I've gotten it with both in different scenarios, but most recently I'd say was Tren in a contest prep. I experienced the gyno flare up almost immediately as soon as I introduced it for the tail end of prep.
Okay.
So I'm not sure.
What's really interesting about that, because someone else on this board, I'm not going to, has said that to me too. there's no animal data to show that occurs, that it's progestogenic. Trenbolone, its metabolite does bind to the progesterone receptor, but it acts as an antagonist. So it's not causing gene expression there. I wonder if the actual trenbolone that the people that are, if it was made from the wrong powder. So when it's made for animals, you have heifer and steer.
Oh, yeah.
It's possible that it was the steer kind that has estrogen in it, and it's causing those effects. And you don't, right? I don't know what lab
that makes sense.
And they might be, instead of synthesizing it from raw, they might be just buying Revlar or something, grinding it up, and adding BA to it.
Yeah, and
I never thought of that, Kurt. That makes sense, though.
That
makes
makes
back in the day when
sense.
guys would cook their own. Guys would go to you'd go to the
they get the pellets
store, and you'd be like, shit. Well, I'm clearly not a heifer. I'm a steer, so I'm going to buy the steer, and that was one with 40 milligrams estradiol in it.
Yeah,
and then think about that, and then they're basically injecting estrogen.
That Finaplex was easier to get than testosterone back in the early 2000s. So
I don't know.
We had all these backwoods guys doing these, just making tons of Tren, and they were just doing that by itself.
Probably the reason why people say that there's a difference between Parabolin and Tren. It's like they use Parabolin, they're like, I got the most amazing results, so I used Tren, just wasn't the same. They're probably using that Tren, which was mixed with 4% estradiol, and that's why they got that fucked up response.
I got a question for you.
I think real Parabolin, then it's different, right? Real Parabolin was a pharmaceutical drug. If you're using Tren or Tren, it's made in an underground lab, even if it says 100 milligrams on the bottle. I mean, Ryan knows this. It might be 25 milligrams on that bottle. You have no way of knowing what the actual lab put in there.
Yeah.
So, Kurt, I got a question for you. When prolactin goes up when I use Tren,
you always make me nervous when you ask me questions.
Well, because I guess if I don't know it, it's pretty hard, right? Yeah, my prolactin goes up when I use Tren. And I know that we just discussed it binds to prolactin receptor, a progesterone receptor, but it's an antagonist, not an agonist. So
through T3, through thyroid.
Okay, you're saying that because it drives up T3, it drives up.
No, down T3. So why it works? So the kind of interesting thing. So that why Trenbolone is the best steroid for nutrient partitioning is not just its interaction with the AR. So most steroids that bind to the AR will cause nutrient partitioning because they're basically going to stop fat accrual, right? And they're going to cause muscle accrual. But Trenbolone has this really weird effect where it lowers T3, at least in most data. And when it lowers your T3, it's going to raise your prolactin. In a cattle,
because there's a stress-associated effect.
But that's what's basically happening is a cow's metabolism is a little too fast. So just eating grass, it's not going to get overly muscular, right? Nature is going to prevent that. When you give a Tren, it slows its metabolism down just enough, and now you're bound to the AR. It's going to push all that grass into muscle. And with humans, you see a more exaggerated effect because our dose is also higher. So it's driving your thyroid function down, just driving prolactin up.
I thought it drove down TBG, so there was more T4 converting to T3.
So wait, you said...
I think only Anabolic does that.
Am I okay to suggest something? Or?
Yeah, go ahead, Nick. What's up?
I was just going to say, you're saying that when you take Tren, you get the prolactin increase?
You can, depending on your thyroid function.
Because
not everybody gets that effect.
Because I thought there's a study that said like T3 was linked to like prolactin reduction. So like a suppression of T3 led to decreased prolactin in lactating women. I was thinking women. That's different. Men. So men would be the inverse. So the inverse effect.
So
that's cool.
This is what people misunderstand about Nandrolone too, because Paul and I get this all the time. You get guys that are on DECA and they have a sexual problem. They always want to assume it's prolactin. They want to use Caber. It's generally not prolactin. It could be prolactin elevated, but through estrogen. So in men, prolactin only goes up when estrogen goes up or when thyroid goes down. In women, it's not the thing. Women, prolactin is a totally different hormone. Prolactin in men is not fully understood. Right? Okay. We don't really know exactly what it's doing.
It's funny
that answers my question. That makes sense.
What I was that on contest prep in the past, when I was working with Justin and we were escalating T3, my T3 started going down. That I went from and I thought it was because there was a point at which my body started fighting it. That my sweet spot was 37, but 50 was too much. But as I escalated T3, I always escalated Tren. So it was a contaminating variable.
Yeah, and then maybe someone's going to reverse T3 as well too, if that wasn't tested.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I assumed at that point there was no more T4, and I wasn't taking T4 and T3. I was just T3.
Yeah.
Going forward, now that I know what I know now, I will always use T4 under my T3 to prevent the reverse T3 pathway.
You just use Armor, right?
I would rather prescribe each individually and modulate them. Okay. I don't like the idea of combination drugs. Okay. Like how all these underground have these shred stacks that are test Masteron and Tren all together. I like to control that, even if it's more oil.
Yeah, I think just because you know what you're doing, and I think that most consumers, Ryan can speak to this, don't. So they'd rather you just decide for them. Like, on the amount of calls I get where people just want you to tell you the stack. They're like, well, how much of this, and this do I need? That most people can't understand that at all.
Same thing with diet and training. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I would say no matter how educated people are, they often are drawing up the wrong amount. I almost feel like I have to stand over them and watch them draw up their medication and get it right.
Yeah, I guess people mess up.
Let's grab the 2 paid questions we got.
Should we get Dan Hansen on semaglutide? From what I've been learning and reading, it atrophies the stomach. After discontinuing use, it stays. Are there any alternatives to semaglutide?
The book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That if you develop stoicism, you'll have no appetite, or you'll be able to control your appetite rather than your appetite controlling you, and you won't need to use it that artificially decreases your appetite.
I haven't heard that it atrophies the stomach. Have you?
It can actually atrophy the stomach. What it does is it causes gastroparesis. That's one of its main problems. And that supposedly there's residual gastroparesis. What people don't understand is they're probably so out of shape that their liver's so fatty from their obesity that the liver doesn't process the drug at the normal half-life, and they have this enormous amount of stockpiled in their body, and it's going to take 6 months to a year to 2 years before their digestion comes back. That I know a guy who owns a compounding pharmacy, and before he would send it out, he wanted to test it to make sure it was good. So I gave him the protocol I would use for obese. He was a bodybuilder, right? So he's much more sensitive to what's going on in his body, and he knows how much he's supposed to eat. He said that he did it for one correctly, and he couldn't eat it all. And then he basically was sticking to like ice cream and drinking regular pop just to keep his calories in, and that he couldn't eat without throwing up for 4 months after he stopped taking it.
Jeez Louise.
But he did eventually be able to digest food again. And that's the thing is, I don't think these people are patient enough. I think that they just are flipping out and there's lawyers calling them saying, hey, are you having gastroparesis? If so, we can put you in this class action lawsuit. But then they have to pretend it's permanent. So then the media is then presenting that as permanent, when really I don't really believe in the post-finasteride syndrome. And that's a whole nother video that's going to get me as much hate as Paul gets for Mike Menser. But I believe that there's a certain personality that seems to get post-finasteride syndrome. And I don't know if it's hormone mediated. I'll just say that. And then the same thing goes for I believe gastroparesis is real. I know people who haven't used semaglutide have gastroparesis, and they said that they'd rather be dead. So I'm very cautious now going forward with the medication, but I'm not convinced it's permanent because we just heard about it. There is a movie called The Jerk with Steve Martin from 1979 where he invented this thing you can put glasses on, but there's a handle thing, and he made all this money, but then people had cross eyes because they were used to staring at the thing, and so he got sued and he lost all the money. And it's like, come on, it wasn't permanent. If you had drugged that out in court long enough, that his eyes would have realigned.
That's pretty funny.
I just like, for me, like semaglutide for most of our audience, bodybuilders, is probably unnecessary. I don't know that you need it. If you're severely obese and you have a hard time controlling appetite or disordered hunger signaling, then it could probably be a tool. But I've never felt like I have an issue controlling my appetite on prep. Like I need. That's really all it's doing for you, right?
Me neither. I'd find that it'd be more useful post show.
Yeah.
I think more
for
people will benefit
post-show
from it
rebound.
post-show. Yeah, but even then, you know what? I'd rather opt for something more benign, something like nicotine gum, something like that.
What's funny is I got in so much trouble because I wrote that article in 2014. They're like, some doctor promoting smoke. Like I said, nicotine, not smoking, fucktards.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble for calling them the fucktard when they are, in fact, by definition. So that they can't tell the difference between nicotine and cigarettes is like, if the drug can be delivered a plethora of ways, the most toxic one is not the only alternative. And but yeah, you're right. I think that getting addicted to nicotine is really easy, though. That is one of the most addictive substances ever. When they want to pull the gum, it's pretty hard. I mean, I could do it before, but that's not a good litmus test for that.
I mean, if you're having appetite control, I don't know why people don't consider, like, if you look at the studies, metformin has a very similar effect on leptin sensitivity.
That's what Karina suggested to me, was that for people, rather than using, basically she was like, metformin has a lot of the same benefits of semaglutide and
without all the side effects.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I brought up what you told me, was that berberine off-season, metformin pre-contest. And so basically with those two puzzle pieces, it helped me understand. And now I explain it to people that metformin is like semaglutide plus berberine.
Yeah.
What I get people to do post show or even in contest prep when they're starting to struggle with appetite, I'll audit their diet. If they've got carbohydrate sources that aren't very satiating, I'll choose carbohydrate sources that have a higher satiety rating, so like things like potato. On top of that too, I'll increase their protein intake, and I'll just basically make small modifications like that. Post show, I'm a real big fan of having protein set quite high because I think it definitely helps a lot in that like first kind of like 2 to 4 week window, just at attenuating that appetite. And so I mean, there's that, but you've got to accept too, you've just got to face the facts that you're going to be fucking hungry if you're dieting. And if you can't handle that, you need to have a teaspoon of concrete and harden the fuck up because you're just a little bitch. Like, it's literally as simple as that. Like, everyone's going to get hungry to varying degrees, and you can attenuate it to a certain level for a certain extended period of time, but you're not going to make appetite disappear no matter what you do.
All right, that's good. That's good to know. So nicotine is a better regulator on appetite because it'll regulate appetite, but it'll still provide hunger for you to get your nutrients in. That's what one of the people commented, and I thought that was an awesome contribution.
All right.
Same
what
guy.
We got here for the next question.
Does an IGF-1 blood level? I'll let you do it.
Oh, okay.
812.
That's fucking high.
Well, I'll read it.
That's off the charts.
He might have an adenema. I would go have an MRI personally with an 812.
Yeah. Well, he's taking 12 units of GH.
No, he says he's off GH.
But that's
he says when he's off GH, he's in range without any health concerns. But when he's on GH, this is what happens.
It goes to 812.
Yeah,
it's debatable. You could do a biopsy. It's hard to say what's bound and what's not bound. 812 is real high.
I think 812 makes sense. So based on your premise, your theory though, Kurt, that it's IGF-1 binding protein 1 is what's causing the systemic level to show up. That it's a measurement of IGF-1 more than is a measurement of IGF response to GH. How did they measure in the cows as can cause the increase in GH? Did they not use the same assay they use in humans?
They do a biopsy on the cows to do satellites.
Oh, okay, I got you.
You can see mechanical growth factor. So in someone that's like you or I, if we're strength training, the IGF in serum will go to the muscle and convert right to 1EC, whatever mechanical growth factor is.
Right.
And you'll see that expression. You don't necessarily want 812 in your blood because that means your serum level is really high. I doubt it's going to the muscle at that point. That's usually seen in adenemas that high.
I mean, I've never seen
anything on giant.
The highest I've ever heard of was you at 700.
Yeah, and that's because I'm not excreting.
Right. Well,
most
what if
people
this
are
guy
around
has a
400,
kidney
aren't they?
problem?
He could have a kidney issue. I mean, I would go see somebody. I would think at 812.
Yeah, but who do we send him to? Because if we say go see someone, he's going to go to his primary care doctor,
No,
and he's going to say
endo.
don't use
Endo first.
and that's the,
Endo and then potentially
wait for an
nephrologist.
MRI.
Yeah, see if you get an ultrasound or MRI of the kidneys, and then maybe a nephrologist if it's needed. But I mean, if he has like one kidney or some shit and he doesn't realize it, I know a powerlifter who didn't find out that he had one kidney until he was like in his 40s.
Yeah, I was 40.
right
on mine.
Yeah, it's
No
quite
kidding.
common.
what
Yeah, so he
you
could-
didn't.
yeah.
It was, wait.
Mine
you never
functions
had
as two. I was born that way. So my artery,
But you
artery doesn't fork; it goes to one.
You never had an abdominal ultrasound before that point?
No. So, I mean, the long story of it is the short, real fast story is that I lost a child, and there was something wrong with its kidneys, and we were trying to figure out where it was coming from. And we know my wife's pathology because they get ultrasounds all the time. I know my children that are living what their pathology is because they were given an ultrasound when they were in utero. We didn't know mine. I was born in the 1970s. They didn't look, so they looked at mine, and sure enough, I have one kidney that's 1.5 times the size of a normal one. But my chromosome 6 is normal, so I don't carry the gene that causes that adaptation. They don't know where it came from.
That's interesting.
But I don't break down and excrete IGF the same as someone with normal kidneys, although my kidney function seems normal. So my IGF tends to get elevated, but it's not necessarily we don't know if it's doing anything or not.
Right, because in theory, if you endogenously had a 600 IGF-1, you'd be 8 feet tall. Like
that's when doctors when they see my IGF, they assume I'm a giant and I'm 5'7".
Right,
and then they assume I have a tumor on my pituitary gland. I don't have one of those either. So
to answer that dude's question is I think the workup algorithm would be a CT or MRI of the skull, and then since you're there anyway, just have them do the abdomen too. And then you see whether you gross pathology with the pituitary gland. If you have an adenoma, it should be larger. And then also you'll see whether you have one kidney or two kidneys. Then they, of course, can do blood tests to determine if there is any. I don't know what the blood test is for an adenoma, a pituitary adenoma. Usually the first sign would just be super high things that are all in the same vein. So you wouldn't just have an elevated growth hormone, you would have elevated other stuff like LH, stuff like that would all be elevated.
Yeah.
Downstream
a lot of times,
targets.
Low testosterone goes with it too, like low T but high IGF.
So stuff along the HPTA axis.
The important thing to remember is just because you're seeing a specialist doesn't mean they're any good. So you have to be your own doctor, and they're just there to order the test for you because you don't have an NPI number. If you approach it with that, where just like if you were going to be in for a crime, you should learn the law because it doesn't mean your lawyer's any good. Think of your insurance company's doctor is kind of like a public defender. They're the absolute lowest of the low. So you're basically fucked if you go with a public defender. You're fucked if you go with the doctor your insurance company's paying because he's only getting paid 30 cents on the dollar. So you know he's not very good because if he was any good, he'd be charging more money. He'd be charging full price. He'd have private practice and not take insurance.
Yeah.
All right, we want to get one or two more in, and then
I got to bounce in a second. So
yeah, let's do one more, and then I got to eat.
All right. Well, saving the best for last. I know that you guys are familiar with the men's wellness post that went viral on the internet.
That wasn't even.
I don't think that was real.
I think it was real.
It wasn't.
I thought it was a guy who identified as bikini.
I'm pretty sure. I looked into it.
It was basically I've got a bit of a rundown on what the actual real situation was. So basically, apparently he competed. I don't think it was an IFBB show. I think it was a different federation or something in another country. It
was in Brazil.
Yeah. And so he basically turned up. He wanted to compete in wellness with women's, and they said, "Well, no, you're not going to do that. But we're also not going to not let you compete." So they basically let him compete against himself. He was like the one competitor in his category. They let him do his thing. They gave him a trophy. He got to go home, do whatever he wanted to do. That was pretty much it. Yeah, and then the media sensationalized it, and obviously, as usual, they deep faked the fuck out of it and tried to make out like IFBB were creating another federation, another category.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with the IFBB or MPP.
So they tried. So he tried to identify as a woman and do women's wellness, but they said we'll do one better. We'll do men's wellness. So he felt extra special. Got his gold star. He was happy, and that
Yeah.
basically made the whole
Participation
IFBB
medal.
look
Yeah.
bad. So Tyler had
Yeah.
to come forward without adding that any extra divisions,
Well,
and he'd
it
be
wasn't
diplomatic.
Yeah.
It
It wasn't even
even
IFBB.
It wasn't even IFBB or NPC. It had nothing to do
Yeah,
with any of
just
them.
some random fed.
But Tyler had to come forward and make a public statement, and it was so carefully worded. It was like legal went over it 3 times. It's like,
Yeah.
not adding any divisions. We're happy with the divisions we have, which is it's so vague, but it's so clear because he didn't specifically. We're not adding a men's wellness division. He didn't say that is not our athlete. We don't know what he's talking about, because then you misgendered him, possibly, depending on the day.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, because if they're, you know, if someone's gender fluid, you can misgender them by calling them the same thing twice. It depends on what they feel like they are that day. Exactly.
They go off their heads. Yeah.
Or like when they have different names for different days, you dead name them by accident because you don't know what their name is that day.
Yeah, so you got to be vague just to avoid stirring the pot.
If there was an audience for it and there were enough people who wanted to compete in the division, I wouldn't give a shit personally.
No, not at all.
I have no problem with it. It'd just be another thing that I don't really, you know, it doesn't really interest me. Like, no offense to the ladies, I don't really watch the female competitors. I'm not big on like men's physique. I like classic physique. I like open. That's just what I'm into. So like it wouldn't I don't think like opening the door to that like detracts from the validity of, you know, the current bodybuilding divisions, in my opinion. But I know there are a lot of opinions on this.
Colin only enjoys women's physique in the gym.
I have a special place in my heart for the bikini competitors. Okay,
I like their warriors and I like wellness, but I like them. What do you call it? In small doses, like 10 girls, plenty. 200 girls, I can't. Even that is overstimulation. You know what I mean? Like, there's only so much of perfect looking women can you see for 2 or 3 hours while you're sitting there waiting for something else to happen. It actually desensitizes you to women to see that many perfect girls walking out in the hundreds like there is at the nationals.
Right.
I'm a weirdo. I enjoy women's bodybuilding, but
I gotta bounce, guys.
All right, take it easy, Kurt.
All right, see you, Kurt.
See you, Kurt.
I do enjoy women's bodybuilding. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. I forgot to eat. I've been slacking on the eating. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you watching.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks
go
for
buy the Anabolics e-course. help me pay for my kids' college. Take care, guys.